Donald Trump said this week that he would not appoint a Supreme Court justice to try to roll back same-sex marriage. Victory, right? Well, no, not really, because despite President-elect Trump saying that same-sex marriage is settled, he also said that he wants to appoint justices who would challenge the 1973 abortion rights ruling Roe versus Wade. One of those conservative judges is William Pryor Jr. I talked to you a little bit about him before the election, and in the past, he suggested that same-sex couples, think about this, same-sex couples should be punished with jail for having sex in their own homes. Doesn't exactly sound like small government conservatism to me. And he defended a law in 2003 in Texas which criminalizes consensual gay sex, comparing it to, quote, polygamy, incest, pedophilia, prostitution, and adultery. Pryor also argued that LGBT people aren't even protected by the United States Constitution. Can you imagine someone on the Supreme Court who believes that based on your sexual orientation, the Constitution may not protect you? He said in a legal brief about the law that states should be able to criminally charge gay people for having sex. Here is a quote from William H. Pryor Jr. "The Supreme Court has never recognized a fundamental right to engage in sexual activity outside of monogamous heterosexual marriage, let alone to engage in homosexual sodomy. Such a right would be antithetical to the traditional relation of the family that is as old and as fundamental as our entire civilization." That's only the beginning. Here is where it gets even more nuts. It's not just about male anal sex, as it often is for homophobes. He also defended straight people's right to have anal sex. So it is really specifically about homosexuality. Quote, "Texas is hardly alone in concluding that homosexual sodomy may have severe physical, emotional, psychological, and spiritual consequences, which do not necessarily attend heterosexual sodomy, and from which Texas's citizens need to be protected." Very often you hear from the right that the problem is sodomy, right? Anal sex and as defined in some states, oral sex. But Pryor went further than that. He actually said, you know, it's not even really the sexual acts specifically that are the problem. Those same sexual acts are fine for heterosexual couples to participate in. It is the gay couples that can't participate there. And here is the last concern about this, as if there aren't many. He uses the term spiritual consequences, Pat. If you're using the term spiritual consequences in a statement about what civil law should do, that is by its very nature church and state not being separated. You should never consider spiritual consequences that more than likely are only relevant to one or two or some limited number of particular religions in figuring out what the law should be. This guy is a danger, and this is who Trump would consider putting on the Supreme Court.
And so much for respecting the First Amendment, because Thomas Jefferson said that separation of church and state actually is a defended right by the Constitution.
Yeah.
And I guess you could kind of look at him as a progressive in some sort of way, because the biblical expectation for homosexuality is that you're put to death.
Oh, yeah. Nice silver lining. Hey, at least he doesn't want to kill gay people. That's certainly something. When the silver lining is they don't want gay people killed, you know that we've hit rock bottom. And Pryor has also defended not allowing same-sex couples to adopt kids. You've got to be pretty depraved to say, hey, there's all these kids who need a loving family. There's no study that says there's anything negative in terms of its consequences for kids when there is same-sex adoption. And he says, no, just based on sexual orientation, they cannot adopt.